king of German mercenaries.
Chapter 87 Unlucky Columbus. After the Pope's decree was issued, the whole of Europe was in an uproar. People suddenly realized that visiting brothels was a terrifying thing that could get them killed. So, people who visited brothels suddenly disappeared. Before the Reformation, the Pope's authority was unmatched. Therefore, the papal decree was very effective. Moreover, this time the Pope issued a decree not to increase taxes or anything, but to save people's lives. Therefore, people were still willing to execute it. However, this was very hard for those women who sold their bodies, because this decree cut off their sources of income and livelihood. Of course, who would care about the lives of these women? They hated the Pope, but there was nothing they could do. They were just a group of weak women, with nothing but their bodies. Along with these women, our great navigator Mr. Columbus also suffered misfortune. Because the Pope's decree stated that syphilis was brought back from the wild continent by his crew. In fact, Columbus also knew that syphilis was indeed brought back by a Sicilian sailor under his command. At the same time, some of his crew members died on the voyage due to syphilis. Originally, Columbus, who returned in June, was still regarded as a great hero by the Spanish. However, after the Pope's decree was issued, Columbus's reputation suddenly became bad. Bringing back the terrible syphilis made everyone panic, and many people began to hate Columbus as the culprit. Although it was not Columbus himself who brought back syphilis, Columbus had to bear the sins committed by his subordinates. So, Columbus, who was a hero some time ago, suddenly became a bear that everyone wanted to kill. Walking down the street, people pointed at Columbus and said, "Look! It's that disaster star who brought back the barbarian diseases from the savage continent. He wants to destroy Europe. Damn, this bastard, everyone throw him." Then a bunch of rotten eggs and rotten vegetable leaves, there were no tomatoes in Europe at that time, were thrown at the former hero Columbus. Even Columbus' sponsors, Queen Isabella I and her husband, King Ferdinand II of Aragon, began to discuss whether to continue sponsoring Columbus's voyages. "My dear, are you still going to continue to sponsor Columbus's voyage? I didn't see him bring back wealth, but he brought back terrible syphilis." Ferdinand II was a little angry. At the beginning, he did not agree with Isabella I's sponsorship of Columbus's voyage, and it was Isabella I who persuaded him. But didn't he discover India? We can have colonies now. Queen Isabella I was still very interested in overseas expansion and was an ambitious woman. But that's not India at all. The Pope said it's a wild continent. Ferdinand II retorted. "How do you know that's not India?" Isabella I asked. "If it was India, where were the spices? Where was the gold?" Columbus only saw a group of barbaric, naked natives. The real India is a developed and prosperous country. Queen Isabella I was silent. "So what do you think we should do?" asked Isabella I. "Let's cancel the subsequent exploration plans for now." "There is no use." Ferdinand II complained. "No, dear, there is a use for occupying the islands discovered so far." "What is it?" asked Ferdinand II. "Grow sugar cane." "Sugar cane? You mean get sugar cane?" "Yes, those islands are very hot and very suitable for growing sugarcane. We can open sugarcane plantations and sugar mills on the islands, and after obtaining sugarcane, we will bring it back to Europe to sell." Isabella I said confidently. Good idea. But those islands are too hot. It is difficult for Europeans to live on those islands for a long time, and they are not adapted to working in tropical areas. Ferdinand II said hesitantly. "It's okay, we can ask Portugal to buy black slaves to do the work." Obviously, Isabella I had already made plans. That makes sense. "So, what should we do with Columbus? Are you sure it was Columbus who brought syphilis back with him?" "It is certain. His Holiness the Pope has sent people to Sicily to investigate, and it was indeed brought back by Columbus's crew." "So the place Columbus discovered was not India?" "I heard from my Italian friends that there are two kinds of Indians, one is white like Arabs, and the other is black. The people discovered by Columbus are brown and yellow, which look like the Chinese in the Far East. However, they are too backward and barbaric. It is said that China is more prosperous than Europe. Moreover, the travels of Marco Polo also explains this point. So we were deceived. It should be. But can't we grow sugarcane? I'm not sailing to grow sugarcane, I'm sailing to find India." Isabella I exploded. The Queen didn't really care about the introduction of syphilis. After all, as a woman, she wouldn't go to a brothel. But after spending so much money, she was furious that she didn't find India. Will you continue sailing in the future? Ferdinand II asked his wife when he saw her explode. Sailing is a bummer. Someone, pass on my order to remove Columbus from his post as governor and confiscate the official residence and property I granted him. The queen, who had not achieved her goal, turned hostile. My dear, please calm down. Without Columbus, who will lead the voyage to the Indies? Aren't you going to send people to plant sugar cane? I am very calm. Except for Columbus, many people in the previous expedition fleet are our people. We can send any captain to continue sailing to discover the islands. Because the nautical charts and hydrographic survey data have been recorded long ago. Although Isabella I was angry, she was not stupid. So why did you dismiss Columbus? Are you stupid? Have you forgotten the agreement Columbus reached with us? He wanted the position of fleet commander and a 10% return on the spoils. In addition, he was the governor of the Indies. It should be the Savage Islands. If I remove him, I can save 10% of the spoils and the position of governor. In fact, Isabella I later removed Columbus in 1500 in order to save a lot of spoils. In other words, the queen is very treacherous. Of course, in history, the queen did not confiscate all of Columbus's property. After all, Columbus had made great contributions, and it was not easy to be too ruthless. Now, Columbus has been proved to have brought back syphilis, which is a serious crime. In a rage, the queen simply confiscated Columbus's house and property. Madam, you are wise. Madam, you are mighty. Ferdinand II immediately flattered his scheming daughter-in-law. In fact, he, the King of Aragon, was not as powerful as his wife, Queen Isabella. Because the Kingdom of Castile was stronger than the Kingdom of Aragon. Just like that, Columbus, who was once a Spanish hero and a Spanish aristocrat, was driven out of his luxurious residence by Queen Isabella in the blink of an eye and became a homeless man. Fortunately, Columbus had deposited a sum of money in a bank in Genoa, which Queen Isabella did not know about. With this money, Columbus was not too poor. However, the deposit was not much, because Columbus did not expect that his property would be confiscated by the queen. Therefore, this money was only enough for Columbus to barely support himself in his old age, and he could not live a noble life again. However, as soon as he left the official residence, Columbus was surrounded by a group of heavily made-up women. It turned out that these were prostitutes who had lost their business due to the Pope's decree. Now, they were living in hardship and inevitably felt resentful. However, they did not dare to resent the Pope, let alone retaliate against him. So, they hated Columbus for bringing back syphilis. Before, when Columbus was still a noble, they didn't dare to do anything. Now, Columbus was deprived of his noble title by the queen and was driven out of the official residence. Then, a group of unemployed prostitutes who received the news surrounded Columbus on the street. Then, someone shouted, "Sisters, scratch him." Then, a group of prostitutes started to scratch and beat Columbus. Chapter 88, Going Home for the New Year. Half an hour later, the women got tired of beating Columbus and let him go. These women were not very strong and their killing power was limited. Therefore, Columbus did not suffer too much crushing damage. However, these women were good at scratching people. When Columbus got up, his face was already covered with bloody marks. Anyway, he was scratched. After getting up, Columbus immediately planned to treat the scars on his face. However, he was penniless now, and his money bag had been taken away by the soldiers who confiscated his property. Fortunately, the clothes he was wearing were still the noble clothes made of expensive silk material. Moreover, when the group of prostitutes beat him just now, they were only concerned with hitting his face and didn't tear his clothes. So Columbus exchanged his luxurious silk clothes for a gold coin and went to treat the wound on his face. However, at that time, the level of medical care in Europe was extremely low, far inferior to traditional Chinese medicine in the East. This was mainly because the church was powerful at that time, and Europeans were far more superstitious than in the East, so they naturally did not pay attention to the development of medicine. Even dissection was considered act of blasphemy against God. European medicine really started to take off after the Catholic Church was defeated in the religious wars. Because at that time, the authority of the Vatican was lost, and many people no longer believed in God superstitiously and began to study science, which was conducive to the development of medicine. Nowadays, many people go to see half-baked priests to ask for blessings and holy water. This is no different from the Chinese people worshipping immortals and drinking the grey water of talismans. Anyway, it's just asking for trouble. Therefore, Columbus could only find a crappy Spanish doctor to treat the wound on his face. The final result was that the bleeding on Columbus' face stopped, but the scar remained permanently. More specifically, Columbus's face was disfigured. In order to cover the scars on his face, Columbus bought a simple mask and put it on. After picking up his wife and 2 sons, Columbus quietly withdrew part of his savings from the Genoa bank branch in Cadiz. Then, he bought a bronze mask and used the alias Anthony. He took his wife and children, who were originally on vacation in Cadiz, to Portugal, hoping that the Portuguese royal family, which valued navigation, would support his navigation career. Columbus used a pseudonym not because he was afraid that the Spanish government would harm him. The Queen would not continue to pay attention to Columbus after she raided his house. However, those prostitutes were different. They lost their jobs because Columbus brought back syphilis. Therefore, the ones who hated Columbus the most were the prostitutes. Basically, if they were recognized, they would scratch Columbus every time they saw him. Moreover, Columbus was no longer a Spanish nobleman. Without the protection of guards, he dared not confront those prostitutes head-on. At this time, it was already the end of 1496. While Columbus was in trouble, Marin was also preparing to go home for the new year. The recruitment of the new Spanish phalanx has been basically completed. However, Marin can completely leave the specific training work to Schwartz and Frundsberg. The two are also very enthusiastic about training the phalanx. Moreover, before going home, Marin gave each of them a big red envelope of 100 gold coins, which made them very happy. Marin himself, along with Khan and his men, as well as 20 guards, landed in Den Helder, riding 2 horses, all the way to Hoffman Manor in Bochum, so that they could go home for Christmas. After a long journey, Marlin finally returned to Hoffman Manor on Christmas Eve. When he got home, he was welcomed by his family, but also besieged by his younger brothers and sisters because Marlin had not fulfilled his promise to take his younger brothers and sisters to live in the castle on the island. Marin was helpless about this. His act of recruiting Frisian fishermen on a large scale offended the Frisian noble republic, which might lead to a conflict between the two sides. For safety reasons, he never took his younger brothers and sisters to live in the castle on the island. The old Hoffman couple and the adult Adler could understand, but the younger brothers and sisters who were still children could not understand. Therefore, when Marin returned home, he was strongly condemned by his younger brothers and sisters. In order to appease his brothers and sisters, Marlin used the trick of throwing gold coins and gave each of his 2 brothers and 1 sister 10 gold coins, which instantly extinguished their anger. You know, it is rare for the brothers and sisters to get a few pennies of pocket money. Marlin gave them 10 gold coins at once, worth 600 pennies, which instantly shocked the 3 children. Then, they didn't care about denouncing Marlin, and all went back to hide the gold coins to avoid being confiscated by Mrs. Mary. The family dinner on Christmas Eve was full of joy. After saying a prayer, the family began to enjoy delicious roast goose, roast suckling pig, braised pork, it felt so discordant, basically a random intrusion. As well as boiled apples, raw vegetables, and other delicious meals. Because Marin ordered a large number of coal produced by the manor, the economic situation of Hoffman Manor was very good. After he had money, old Hoffman spent money to renovate the house, turning the original 2 country villas into 4 villas plus a tall wall. This layout is somewhat similar to a castle, but the number of rooms is much less than that of a castle. Therefore, this layout is more like a large mansion in the east. The wall is high and wide, and people can stand and patrol on the top of the wall, which has military functions. In order to protect the interests of the manor and coal mine, Hoffman Manor established a 20-person guard team, including 5 attendants each of old Hoffman and Adler. Marin, how is the construction of your Texel island going? After dinner, old Hoffman asked leisurely while picking his teeth. Not bad. I plan to invest a huge amount of money next year to build Dengbao into a real military fortress to prevent others from coveting it. Military fortress? That's not cheap. If it's as you said, it will cost tens of thousands of gold coins. Old Hoffman said in surprise. The old Hoffman couple obviously didn't know much about Marin's financial situation. It's nothing, Dad. I use the coal from our manor to boil salt on the island. The profit is very high. In a year, I can make hundreds of thousands of gold coins. In fact, Marin's profit from boiling salt is 210,000 gold coins a year. Marin even plans to expand the scale of salt boiling to make more profits. However, he was worried that his family would tell the secret after hearing the news. So he said less to avoid others knowing the secret. You know, the jealousy disease is not only common among Chinese people, but also among Europeans. After the rise of the Spanish colonial empire, the British became pirates because of jealousy and specialized in robbing Spanish gold ships. Therefore, for the sake of safety, Marin tried to keep the specific profit as low as possible. But even so, the family was still shocked. More than 100,000 gold coins. 1 year. Old Hoffman and Lady Mary were extremely shocked. In a blink of an eye, the pride that old Hoffman and his wife had previously felt because the annual profit of the manor coal mine reached tens of thousands of gold coins was immediately hit. Relying on the large orders from the Wiggins Chamber of Commerce and Texel Island, the annual income of Hoffman Manor, relying on the coal mine operation, is only more than 10,000 gold coins. This income is very impressive compared to those purebred knight lords. But compared to Marin, it is really nothing. Father, mother, Marin is a baron, and our family is just a knighthood. How can we compare with a baronhood? A baronhood can be divided into more than a dozen knighthoods. Adler was generous and fat. He thought it was normal for Marin to earn more than 100,000 gold a year. After all, Marin was a baron, and a baronhood was usually larger than more than a dozen knighthoods. However, he obviously did not consider that an ordinary knight's territory would be lucky to have an annual income of 2,000 to 3,000 gold coins. Hoffman Manor's annual income was over 10,000 gold coins, which was definitely in the leading position among the knight's territories. Wow, brother is so rich. Brother Marin, we want so many good things, can you buy them for us? After hearing that Marin was so rich, the three little ones, Simon, Albert and Anne, all pestered Marin and started to act coquettishly. No problem, no problem. I'll take care of Simon and Albert's horses and armor for you three little guys. I'll also contribute a lot to Anne's dowry. When the little girl Annie heard about the dowry, she was overwhelmed. Shy Annie covered her face, said, "Brother is bad," and ran away with a red face. Simon and Albert, on the other hand, strongly requested that Marin deliver the warhorse and armor in advance. Give it to you now. No. War horses are fine, but armor is not. Your height has not yet been finalized, and you are still growing. Armor is customized according to your height. We have to wait until you stop growing in height before we can customize plate armor. But, Brother Marin, didn't you also start wearing armor and going to the battlefield before your height was determined? Simon retorted, indeed, Marin went to the battlefield at the age of 16, wearing only half a set of worn-out plate armor. Marin is still growing taller. However, when he really went to the battlefield, Marin did not wear knight plate armor, but wore 2/3 of the breastplate armor and a steel helmet. My brother is not wearing knight armor, but a simple armor, the same kind that Khan wears. That kind of simple armor that doesn't even cover half of your body. You're going to wear that on the battlefield? Old Hoffman was dissatisfied. As a veteran knight, he thought that Marin's simple plate armor was for ordinary soldiers. Unexpectedly, Marin also wore that kind of low-level armor in his own battle. Isn't that a joke with his life? Father, I am a commander, not a knight who charges into battle. All I have to guard against are the enemy's stray arrows. Therefore, that kind of armor is enough. You know, I have thousands of subordinates blocking the way in front of me, it's safer to wear a full set of plate armor. Old Hoffman is very persistent about his profession. But a full set of plate armor is heavy, and I'm not as strong as Adler, Old Hoffman was furious. This naughty kid dared to talk back. Old Hoffman was ready to beat Marin up. But thinking that the kid was already a baron, he decided to give the kid some face. By the way, Marin, you said you would give the war horses to Simon and Albert. When will you return them? Old Hoffman changed the subject. In 2 years, they still have several years to go before they reach adulthood. My batch of war horses are currently being bred, so I can't leave them for the time being. In 2 years, I'll pick out 2 good horses for them. By the way, I'll also pick out 2 stronger pack horses for them to ride on. Okay, actually. Father, Simon and Albert don't necessarily need to continue to be knights and go to war. Adler and I have both become knights, and they can actually do something else instead of having to take risks on the battlefield. How can that be? There is no coward in the Hoffman family who is afraid of war. Besides, what else can they do if they don't fight? Old Hoffman said with his eyes wide open. You can switch to a clerical job. Marin suggested. Civil servants. His father is just a rough guy who only knows how to fight. Can they do civil servant work? Old Hoffman did not believe that his children had the ability to be civil servants. Dad, have you forgotten Mom? She is a smart woman. With her teaching, it will be no problem to train my 2 younger brothers to become civil servants. When they grow up, I plan to send them to Cologne to attend university. After hearing this, Mrs. Mary at the side immediately gave Marin a look that said, you have good vision. But, they want to be civil servants, who will accept them? Old Hoffman hesitated. As for me. Father, my barony is in great need of civil servants. All my subordinates are rough men who command fights and risk their lives. What's missing is the civil servants who can govern the country. That's not bad, but can you wait until they grow up? By the time they grow up, your barony's civil servants will be full, right? That's not necessarily true. Who says I will only be a baron in the future? When the emperor has a new war to fight, and I have made a few more contributions, I might even become a viscount, vice-earl, or earl. Everyone was silent. For a knight family, the title of earl was simply out of reach. Marin, next time we go to war, can you take me with you and let me make some contribution or something? Adler said stutteringly. He was very envious of Marin's success. Adler was already 21 years old, but he had not yet become a knight with a title. As for the future, Adler did not have much ambition. He thought that if he could become an imperial knight, he would be very satisfied. At least, the imperial knight was a level higher than the knight of the earldom of Mark. No, you bastard, I won't let you go to the battlefield before you give birth to my eldest son. Old Hoffman was unhappy. The second son went to the battlefield because he had no fiefdom and was forced to make this choice, which was equivalent to exchanging his life for his future. But the eldest son, who obviously had manors and coal mines to inherit, why would he risk his life? If he died on the battlefield by accident, that would be terrible. Old Hoffman knew very well that although Adler was good at martial arts, he was far inferior to Marin in brains. Such a brainless guy could easily become cannon fodder on the battlefield. Unlike Marin, who was smart and clever and had the ability to plot against the King of France. Chapter 89, News about the Martial Arts Contest. But, Father, I don't have a wife yet. Adler answered embarrassedly. You are such a loser. You don't have a wife, so why don't you go and find one yourself? Back then, didn't your father, relying on his own heroic spirit, catch a beautiful and intelligent noble lady like your mother? Old Hoffman said proudly. At this time, apart from the younger siblings who were still ignorant, Adler and Marin who knew the inside story rolled their eyes together. You are just lucky, how dare you say that? If Lady Mary's grandfather was still an earl and had not been overthrown, you, a stupid and poor knight, would have any chance. Although there are legends in medieval Europe about brave knights winning the hearts of princesses, in reality, that is only a plot in novels. Real princesses marry either kings or dukes. At the very least, they marry earls. As for a little knight, it is considered very lucky to marry the daughter of a baron. In reality, knights cannot marry princesses. However, they can have a fleeting romance with noble ladies who worship the strong. This custom was very common in the Middle Ages. A chivalrous knight won the tournament, and at night, a coquettish middle-aged noble lady who could breathe dirt would come to have sex with him. And this is what many equally coquettish knights look forward to. Many people even regard this as a kind of honor. Adler wanted to follow Marin to fight in the war and gain military merits, but old Hoffman gave him the following conditions: first get married and give birth to a son, otherwise he would not be allowed to go out to fight. On the third day after Christmas, Brother Simon came back from a trip to town and came to the living room excitedly. In the living room, the old Hoffman couple were chatting with their 2 adult sons. Father, Mother, Brother Adler, Brother Marin, I heard some very exciting, Marin taught him this word, news. Can you guess what it is? Guess your sister, tell me quickly, or I'll beat you up. Marin didn't want to play the childish game of guess again with Simon, so he just scared Simon. My sister? Brother Malin, isn't my sister your sister? Guess what Annie did? Marin rolled his eyes and threatened directly, if you don't tell me, I won't give you gold coins anymore. This trick is very effective. With the pocket money from the gold coins given by Marin, Simon and Albert like to go to the town to shop and play. If they don't have money in their pockets, they won't bother to go to the town. There are so many delicious and fun things, but they don't have money to buy them. It's a very uncomfortable feeling. The huge sum of 10 gold coins given by Marin can make these 2 naughty kids act like big money in the town. Moreover, they are accompanied by old Hoffman's knights and attendants when they go to the town, so they don't worry about being robbed of their gold coins. Brother Marin is so mean. Simon said angrily. However, for the sake of gold coins, he decided to compromise. So, he told the explosive news he had heard. What? A martial arts competition to find a bride? Marin was completely Spartan, feeling like a plot had intruded. Marin even speculated whether Yang Tiexin and Mu Nianzi, father and daughter, had also traveled to Europe. Yes, a tournament to find a bride. There is a knight named Hamler in the northern knighthood of Gelsenkirchen. His eldest daughter is 20 years old this year, and Knight Hamler plans to marry his daughter off. However, Knight Hamler is a tournament fanatic. He requires that anyone who wants to marry his daughter must be a brave and skilled knight. Therefore, he plans to hold a private knights tournament, and the winner will marry his daughter. Simon said excitedly with a flushed face. Where does this news come from? Is it reliable? Old Hoffman frowned. It was Netanyahu, a Jewish businessman doing business in town, who said it. He just came back from the north. I heard that the tournament will be held on January 15th, I wonder if the knight's daughter is beautiful or ugly. Adler muttered. Don't worry about that. Netanyahu said that Miss Hamler is a very beautiful woman. However, she is not very gentle and likes to practice martial arts. Most thin men may not be able to beat her. After saying that, Simon gave a mean look at the thin Marin. Marin understood immediately and became furious, wishing to beat Simon up right away. 2 years later, because he was still in the growth period, Marin's height had grown to about 1.76 meters. It was estimated that he would reach 1.8 meters by the age of 20. But compared with Adler, a 1.9 meter tall strong man, he was just thin. Even old Hoffman looked much stronger than Marin. There is no way, Marin is not a macho man, he can only go the route of a creamy boy. In the Hoffman family who worship muscles, Marin is obviously despised for this. Even Simon, a mischievous monkey, thinks that Marin is too thin. Simon, are you going to fight Miss Hamler or another knight? Asked old Hoffman. First the knights will compete in a joust, and the first one to win will fight Miss Hamler. Miss Hamler is so powerful. She can fight against the knights tournament champion. Marin was shocked. Generally speaking, the last one to appear is the finale. That's not the case. I heard that Miss Hamler is a violent girl who was deeply influenced by her father. She firmly believes that only the man who beats her in a joust is qualified to marry her. So, the knight who won the championship defeated her, which was actually Miss Hamler's surrender ceremony. This is what Netanyahu said. It would be unjust if we didn't watch such a bizarre event. Dad, Adler, let's go watch it. Marin said excitedly. Although he had traveled through time and space and became a German, his Chinese nature of loving to watch the excitement and not minding the big things had not changed. Moreover, watching this kind of excitement was not dangerous. I want to go too, I want to go too. Simon was also jumping around. What are you going to do? Old Hoffman glared. Find a sister-in-law for my brother. A male knight and a female knight, how wonderful. What's good about that? I still think a virtuous noble lady is better. Old Hoffman still felt that a beautiful and gentle noble lady like Lady Mary was the best spouse. Dad, you got a huge bargain by marrying Mom. If Mom's grandfather was a count, and you were just a poor knight, would you have any hope at all? Marin said contemptuously. Soon, old Hoffman became angry and started to chase Marlin. Although Marlin's kung fu was not very good, he was light and flexible, so he was good at escaping. On the side, Lady Mary spoke, okay, stop it. Honey, I think Marin is right. Nobles all pay attention to matching. In our family, besides Marin, Adler is marrying a knight's daughter, which is also a good match. If it was a baron's daughter, she might not be interested in Adler. Besides, Adler doesn't know how to coax a girl. Why don't you let Adler try? Yeah, let's let Big Brother try. Maybe Adler can't beat the other knights. Marin thought it was very funny, so he started to provoke him. Bullshit, Adler is much better than you in martial arts. Ordinary knights are no match for him. As long as he goes, he will definitely win. Old Hoffman was simple-minded and was indeed provoked. Father, Marin, I don't even know what the girl looks like yet. If she doesn't meet my standards, I don't want her. Adler, who had been playing by the wayside for a long time, said helplessly. That's easy, Adler. Tomorrow I'll go to Gelsenkirchen with you to secretly observe and see what the girl looks like. If you like her, you can participate in the competition. If you don't like her, then forget it. Marin suggested. Good idea, everyone agreed. But Gelsenkirchen, why does it sound so familiar? Oh, isn't that the city where Schalke 04 is located? Could it be that it hasn't been built yet? Marin suddenly remembered that the Bundesliga powerhouse Schalke 04 in the future seemed to be in Gelsenkirchen. However, Gelsenkirchen in the future was a coal mining industrial city. And now, Gelsenkirchen is said to be just a village where the knights are located.